Hi, my name is Marcus Ruiz-Evans. I'd like to talk to you about an ongoing battle going on right now between the California government and the federal government. Basically a war that you've probably never heard of. A couple key dates you know of. Number one, April 1st, 4/1. Here at Yes California, we talked about nationalizing the borders and redirecting the California Department of Food and Agriculture, which has border protection stations and offices at every seaport and airport, to basically become the guard of the all entry points into and out of California. We already identified that as the best agency in California to be nationalized and say, you're going to become the border now. They already have 16 border checkpoints. They're already at airports and seaports, and they can do the job. And they've already worked with the California Highway Patrol and the other California departments. So easily could be converted, done something like this. We made that suggestion on April 1st. We said, look, if you're going to actually protect against coronavirus and the opening of the economy by Trump and people dying who would have stayed alive if we followed proper precautions, then you have to seize control of the border. Now, when I said that, that was seen as radical. Nobody said anything about that, con or good. Well, recently, April 23rd. That's April 23rd in the SCOCAblog, basically the University of Berkeley Constitutional Law Center. So University of Berkeley is one of the top universities in the world, routinely ranked as one of the top universities on earth. It has one of the top legal universities in all of California, which has one of the harshest legal climates anywhere. So it's harder to get a license to practice law in California than anywhere else. One of the top universities that understands the law is Berkeley here in California, and it's one of the top universities. At Berkeley, they have a Constitution Center. So the best scholars understanding the law and federal law, etc., reside there. They have a blog where they say, here's our legal opinion about things. Now, on April 23rd, they talked about seizing control of the border and the legal implications of if it's possible. That article was called That article was by Brandon Strackner, and it said you can partially close the border, but not completely close the border. That was in the SCOCAblog. That's the UC Berkeley California Constitution Center, April 23rd, by Brandon Strackner. What he said was, Governor Newsom, don't seize control of the border. It's maybe possible, but probably not. And what you should do instead is if somebody comes to the California border and they want in, and they're from a state that doesn't follow proper protocols, you can do two things. One, if they stay in California while they're traveling through California for more than 2 hours, they have to enter into a 14-day quarantine. So I'm from Nevada. I come into California, and Nevada's not following. Well, Nevada is now part of the pact. So a different example. Wyoming. Someone comes from Wyoming. They want to come into California. California is saying, whoa, you're with the federal government on reopening the economy. We don't trust the way that you're doing things. We have our own protocols. So in order to enforce those, California can say, if you're coming into California, you're free to drive through California. If you stop anywhere in California for more than 2 hours, you have to do a 14-day quarantine. So we'll keep you in one location. You're not allowed to interact with anybody. And after 14 days, if you don't show signs, you can be released. The key thing is they have to do that for both California citizens and any citizens of America. They have to say, if you stay in California and you weren't already here and you're traveling through California and you stop for more than 2 hours, you have to be quarantined for 14 days. So that's what the legal scholars at the UC Berkeley Constitutional Center are saying. Do that instead of controlling the border. The other thing they said was California could legally require all truck drivers to have to wear a mask. So again, you come up to the border. Hey, I want to come into California and I'm from Trump's America and we don't really do what you do over here in California to prevent coronavirus. Okay, you can come in, but you have to wear a mask. And I expect that the entire time you're driving your truck or your car, you'll be wearing a mask. Also, If you stop anywhere in California, wherever you're going, dropping off goods, visiting an aunt, and you spend more than 2 hours outside of your car or vehicle, you have to stay here for 14 days in quarantine. So that's what the legal scholars are saying do. Now here's the problem with that. Who's going to follow those truck drivers and make sure they keep the mask on? They show up the border with a mask on. Hey, buddy, you're going to make sure to keep that mask on the entire time you're traveling through California. I will. Who's going to make sure that happens? We're going to have a cop for every single person coming from outside of California, trailing them the entire time that they're in California to make sure they keep that mask on? How do we know they won't just take the mask off? We have truck drivers who come into California, and California has very strict truck driving laws. Those laws are routinely broken by truck drivers from out of California. So we already know that California has vehicle laws. People act like they're going to follow them and then don't once they're in California. Namely, I think you can only drive a truck for so many hours, and then you have to sleep for so many hours, and you have to keep a log. A lot of people don't do that if they're not from California. So we already have truck drivers violating this. So I don't see how you come into California, keep a mask on how are you going to enforce that? What if they don't keep the mask on? The moment they get past the border, take that mask off, roll down the window, cough everywhere. How are you going to stop that? Remember, these are people not from California. They don't buy into our belief in coronavirus and how dangerous it is. They're part of Trump's America, and he's saying we're overreacting. Plus, we're communists, and we just love taking control over people. So here's somebody from America. They've been pumped full of ideas that we in California are crazy, and we're overreacting, and they're watching Fox TV and Breitbart, and they come in and they say, I'll keep my mask on the entire time. Idiots. And then they drive through, take the mask off. How do you know that's not going to happen? You don't. So you're hoping with the honor system that Americans who are not part of California's pact and who already view us as extremists will follow our rules out of the kindness of his heart. We're using the trust protocol to make sure all these truckers and all these people from America come through and they keep that mask on. Okay, now let's go to the second part. They said, well, you can't stop people at the border. This is the UC Berkeley Constitution Center scholars on April 23rd. You can let people come through. If they stop for more than 2 hours anywhere, they have to stay 14 days in quarantine. Okay. So let's say I'm a truck driver. I drive through and I stop at a gas station and I cough all over my hands and then I grab every pump. And then I go into the convenience store and I grab nuts. I don't want those nuts. I'll put these back. That's virus everywhere. Whoops. And then another person, a Californian, goes to that gas station because they live near a highway and it's the closest gas station to them. Touch the pump handle. Now I have coronavirus. Grab that sack of nuts. Grab those snacks. Now I have coronavirus. That didn't protect anybody. I can only stay no more than 2 hours, and that's the protocol to make sure I don't infect everybody. I come through a town, I stop at every other gas station, get some gas, buy some water, stretch my legs. A lot of truckers do that. A lot of people just driving through do that. Let's say I want to see grandma. Coming into California from Kentucky, I get over the border about an hour and I go, you know what? I don't even like grandma. I'm going to drive back. And in my heart, I really felt I was going to see grandma. And then in my heart, I really felt I didn't want to and I left. But I got thirsty. So I stopped at a Quickie Mart and bought some water. But I touched 5 bottles of water before I grabbed the one I want and then left. I brought disease in from outside. And I passed it around at a gas station. Or a convenience store. Or a fast food restaurant. Here's the problem. A lot of poor communities full of people with brown skin go to those Quickie Marts and gas stations near the highway. People who are poor buy property near freeways because it's not as nice, so it's cheaper. So they live there. Where do you think they shop? The local gas stations and convenience stores that people from America who don't follow our values and protocols are now coughing all over. And we said that's totally cool. And then we have poor minorities get sick. Great. So, that's their plan. That is the SCOCAblog plan in order to prevent coronavirus as an alternative. Hey, you wear a mask. Hey, you can't stop more than 2 hours while you're driving through California, or you have to stay 14 days. So the UC Berkeley California Constitutional Center author Brandon Strackner from the SCOCAblog, the top constitutional scholars in the top university about this anywhere in California, are saying, Governor Newsom, do not control the border. Do this instead. Just to prove to you that's what they're saying, let's go here. Okay. If Congress were to pass a statute clearly manifesting an intent to preempt state border closures related to coronavirus, or that irreconcilably conflicted with a state border closure law, the federal law would prevail. They also said a state could argue that its police powers include regulating vehicle traffic across a state's border during quarantine. Another quote, courts will apply strict scrutiny to state quarantine orders that significantly affect travel across the state borders. Another quote, states can likely show that protecting their citizens against the spread of a global pandemic such as COVID-19 is a compelling government interest. However, when you're looking at the Constitution, the federal government could countersue you, saying that what the state did was not the least restrictive means, and that if any other method exists to achieve the desired results. Finally, the state will face an uphill battle in arguing that completely sealing the border to all traffic was the least restrictive means. A complete border closure might not be a viable path. Now, the reason that I'm saying all those quotes from that article is you'll see a lot of might and maybes. So here's the Berkeley constitutional law scholar saying, sorry, let me make sure that's recording. Okay. And sorry. And they're saying, Governor, closing the border might be unconstitutional. The state may have difficulty making the argument that it had to close the border. Easier way, something that'll hold up in federal courts, is you did something less restrictive. But as I pointed out, it's a bad solution that will not save lives and get people killed. So, here's this blog saying, not guaranteed that you can't seal the border, just likely, maybe, probably would be challenged. Can't say guaranteed. And they're also saying, we recommend something less, because the way the Constitution says is that a state can only do things if it can prove there was an emergency and there wasn't an easier, less difficult option. I'm arguing that their advice is bad. That if you don't completely seal the borders, you're going to let people die. That's not a less restrictive option. That's just a horrible option. So I'm going against the advice of the UC Berkeley Constitutional Center, and I am directly contradicting them and saying, Governor Newsom, you must seal the border. They said it is a maybe that it can't be held up in court. That's not for sure. If you do not seal the border, Americans who don't believe in California laws, don't like us, disrespect our culture, don't believe we're doing the right thing, and just generally think we're nuts, are going to come in here and infect people who will typically be poor and minorities, and they will die. And that will be your fault, Governor Newsom. Because you knew better. And you didn't take the right stance. Yeah, calling you out. Now, that's a big claim to say UC Berkeley might be misleading the public. Okay. Let's take a look. Now, I want to tell you about 2011. In 2011, Robert Burgiow was the dean of Berkeley. And in an article called UC Berkeley Morphing into Federal University, in 2011, Robert Burgiow said that the federal government had replaced the majority of the funding for UC Berkeley coming from California. So Throughout history, UC Berkeley was primarily funded by Californians. In 2011, the dean of Berkeley saying that's no longer the case. The majority of the funding for Berkeley comes from the feds. Let's fast forward to the Daily Californian, Berkeley newspaper, April 2017. Berkeley research is half funded by America. So, here's Berkeley. You say something America doesn't like? Guess who's in financial ruin? You. But I'm supposed to believe you're impartial. Maybe. A couple facts to point out, though. There was another crisis in 2016 and 2017. In fact, from, basically November 2016 to March of 2017. November 2016 to March of 2017, CalExit was all in the news. And UC Berkeley was doing everything it can to tell people, don't look this way and don't pay attention and don't do that. So, what examples do we have? Well, the SCOCAblog, this exact same one, November 13th, 2016, Stephen M. Duvernay. This same blog said, CalExit, good luck with that. And then they said it was a stupid idea and couldn't happen. Now, here's the thing. This constitutional scholar on a constitutional blog said Texas versus White does exist, and you can secede through consent of the states, and it says that in Texas versus White. He does acknowledge that. But then he says that court case doesn't matter because of the Civil War. Okay, well, the Civil War ended in 1865. Texas versus White was taken on in 1869. So it came after the Civil War. The way the law works is you have to go off the most recent legal precedent. You don't go, hey, there's a law on dogs barking in this year, but I'm going to choose this law on dogs barking that's older than that. That's not how the law works in America. So why is a constitutional scholar on a constitutional blog not getting it right and saying that the Civil War is the legal interpretation for secession when a Supreme Court case came after that? That's not how the law works. Why is he not aware of how the law works and sort of misleading the public about CalExit? This exact same blog. He also says that Texas versus White is not the authority on if states can secede. Now, the interesting thing is that David A. Carrillo is the dean, or was the dean, of the UC Berkeley Constitutional Center. And in PE.com, I think that's pressenterprise.com, PE.com on August 31st, 2018, David A. Carrillo, the dean of this Constitution Center, said that Texas versus White probably means an amendment process. Now, here's the interesting thing. David A. Carrillo, director of the Berkeley Constitution Center, same one that wrote this blog saying, hey, Governor, don't seal the border, do something else, also wrote a blog on CalExit and said CalExit could never happen because Texas versus White, nobody really cares. It doesn't really say you can secede. So that's what they said. Now, here's the thing. March 11th, 2017, San Francisco Chronicle, David Carrillo said only an amendment could allow California to secede. So March 2017, David Carrillo, SF Chronicle, only an amendment could allow you to secede. The very next year, August 31st, 2018, he contradicts himself and says, well, actually, Texas versus White probably means amendment. You said that it definitely meant amendment the year before, and then you changed your tone afterwards. And then you contradicted your own blog that came out 2 years earlier. You're the dean of a constitutional center. How come you're changing your tune on an understanding of the law? How come you're contradicting people in a blog your people wrote? And isn't it interesting that it's the same place that's saying, hey, Governor Newsom, don't pursue this more radical option, go for the more mainstream one? You misled Californians a few years ago about the legality of secession. And then you backtracked after we called you out. And that was the director of the same place. And this blog also made a huge legal blunder when talking about how Calexit wasn't correct. But there's more. March 2017, UC Berkeley comes out with a poll on Calexit. Now, here's the thing. January 2017, Reuters, Ipsos, Stanford University, Reuters and Stanford, two reputable polling organizations, January 2017 show 32% of Californians were for secession, 15.5% didn't know how they thought, and about 49% said, I'm not sure. Which you added up as roughly 46 to 47.5% is either not sure they're against secession or for it. Now, the UC Berkeley poll came out in March 2017, 2 months later. It did not ask the same questions. It did not ask, are you for secession? Are you not sure? Are you against it? It only asked, are you for it or against it? See how it's a different survey? And then they came out with different results. Well, 32% was for. That means 2/3 are against. And the news went wild with that. Hey, we did a new poll on Calexit. 2/3 of Californians are dead against this. Here's the thing. You didn't ask the same questions. You removed that middle question. It's a different poll. You didn't even give people the option. And you directly contradicted two other reputable polls that came out before to say something else, to tone down the interest in Calexit. And this is all after the dean says you guys are run by the federal government now. So your dean of your constitutional center gets it wrong about Texas versus White, backtracks. Your blog gets it wrong about the process of the law. A dean says you're all owned by the federal government. And then recently you said, Governor Newsom, don't take over the borders. Do something that allows people to just wear a mask, and we trust that they'll keep that mask on while they're here in California, and let them come into California. And as long as they don't stop for more than an hour and a half, that's fine. And if they cough over everything, it's cool. Don't seize the borders. Don't control them. Allow people to come in, and on the honor system, we hope they don't infect us, primarily at gas stations and roadside stops that will mostly hurt poor minorities. Yeah. Stuff to consider. So, April 1st, yes, California said, seize the border. Nationalize the border. People said, whoa, that's way too extreme. April 23rd, top scholars at UC Berkeley looked into doing just that. April 27th, William Barr, the Attorney General for the United States government, says the Constitution forbids undue interference with the national economy, and that he was sending people, civil rights attorney generals, to address that overreach in court. That's 4 days after the top constitutional scholars in California say what they can and can't do legally. So, we are in unprecedented times. Saving lives is most important. Do not follow the advice of the UC Berkeley Constitution Center. They outright misled people about Calexit. Here they are again saying don't do the more radical option. And are they misleading people legally? I don't know. But I know they misled people legally before, and they misled people about support. And they're owned by the feds. Okay? Just realize that. And now I'm supposed to believe that they're looking at this neutrally? Governor, don't get people killed. Don't listen to them. Do what we said here at Yes California before anybody else. Take control of the goddamn border and keep people not in body bags.